Hey everyone, this is Jesse Collins, coming to you live from the Power Up Digital Games Conference. Right now we're introducing Connor VanDyke, the CEO of Major Games, as well as Gabriel Orlandelli, the lead designer of Major Games as well. And we're going to be talking today. I'm going to be doing this more in an interview style, so I'll be speaking a little bit more as well. Let's get going. Connor and Gabe, go
Hello.
ahead and there you are.
Yep, hello there.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here.
All right, so the first, this is going to be a simple question format. I'm going to ask questions. We're going to talk back and forth, and then at the end, we'll reserve the questions at the end where others can ask about it. All right, so let's get underway. Let's start with tell us a little bit about Major Games. How did it start, and so on.
All right, well, I'll take this one then. Hello, everyone. This voice talking to you right now is Connor. I'm the president of Major Games. So basically, Major Games has been essentially a group of master's grads that sort of got together, started applying for jobs, and realized we didn't want to go and work for a gambling company or something like that just to get a job in the industry. We wanted some more control over the products that we worked on and to really be able to make a difference in our own way. So after all of us graduated, we sort of slowly started getting together one by one and essentially just started thinking, what games would we like to make? The first title that we really pushed through and got done and on Steam now was a game called Bit Evolution. I'll link a trailer in the chat there. So if anybody's curious to watch it, they're more than welcome to. But with this game, it took us, Gabe, how long did it take us roughly?
We were ending our masters when we started working on it, but of full-time work, it was around 6 months.
Yeah,
it's pretty quick.
Yeah, like we got it out pretty quick, but yeah, it took, I'd say about 6 to 8 months of active development, but it took a little longer because of just part-time stuff and things we had to do beforehand. But once we all got in and managed to work full-time on the game together, it took us roughly, right around 6 to 8 months to really just push it all through. It was honestly a ton of fun working on that. And from there, we basically just started working on additional projects, and that's bringing us to where we're at now. You have anything else to add on your end, Gabe, for this question?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. And yeah, it was a blast to work on Bit Evolution, especially the part of, researching the games that we grew up playing, but going to the technicalities of them.
Oh yeah, no, that was actually really fun, was going through and like analyzing what the capabilities of every machine were, because that really helped drive a lot of things on the game. Made it very difficult at times because, especially for the old school like Atari era themed game, like levels that we made for the game, it made it very hard for us to be able to go in and actually like match the limitations of that era, because quite frankly, when we did, people just weren't enjoying the game very much because it was just so limiting compared to what you can play today. So we did take a few liberties on it, but that was definitely a lot of fun. Also, all the bit puns.
Recreating.
Yeah. We had a bit too many puns going on in the office, but yeah, it was pretty groan-worthy.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about working with Burnout Game Ventures a little.
Gabe?
Sure. So we've been working with Burnout Game Ventures since Rupert started the company. So we were on a game jam, and that was a turning point for all of us. And we started working with different teams, and working with Burnout Game Ventures was really helpful because the big difficulty of developing games nowadays is that you want to try to focus as much as you can on the game, but at the same time, as an indie developer, you need to focus on business and marketing and your community and all that stuff. So basically, Burnout Game Ventures was really helpful, helping us deal with the business stuff, find talent. Basically, it's like game development. You can do a game on your own, but it's very limiting. So depending on if you want to do more elaborate things, you need a team, and that's
No, and
yeah.
and the thing is, the team is probably the most important thing. Because when we first started with Burnout Game Ventures on stuff, we were actually working on a completely separate project. I had started some work on Bit Evolution, but for the most part, most of us were working on a first-person horror game. But the difference between productivity. Oh, pardon me. The difference in productivity between the title that we were working on first and the Major Games project was drastically different. Where the second we started working on Bit, we just took off at a running start. We're getting things done fast. It really just broke down to having a team of people that worked well together. And that's one of the earliest things that I really learned about that is all of us who worked on Bit Evolution were great friends. We could just hang out and do stuff outside of work as well. And that really helped to show in just our motivation for getting the project through and going. And really continues our motivation to keep working on these things because we're all really just trying to get out the next thing. And honestly, our Skype conversations and our meetings are always just so, I don't know, half of it's business, half of it's just sort of messing around. But in the game industry, that's kind of the nice thing about it is you're able to sort of have a good time doing the work that you're working on.
Awesome. Okay, so when it comes to major games and all that, what were the initial difficulties in building, having a remote team and things with the processes themselves?
Well, I'd actually say one of the first things that was really a major difficulty was getting the team together to start. Because, realistically, we got in there and I knew programming, I knew some art, I knew a lot of things, but then none of us were great artists for pixel art. So that was probably the first major hurdle that we had to go through was actually finding finding artists who can do good pixel art for us. And especially under the manner of earning the percentage profit idea, because then we're not paying them up front, which makes it even more difficult. It's kind of funny because I like to tell this story sometimes on the importance of networking, just because realistically the saving grace was literally one day I just started chatting with somebody at a local Subway and was basically just like, oh, I see you like games. What do you do? It turned out she was a basically teacher's aide, I believe, or I'm trying to remember what her official job title was, but she helped out a lot with a number of art students at the school. And she ended up forwarding us almost all of our artists that we used for Bit Evolution. And that was honestly one of the more interesting things, because this just random encounter that I could have just shut up and not say anything to somebody ended up being the thing that got us the people we needed to really go through and finish the game. So that was definitely a big thing. The biggest thing, though, was probably just learning marketing in general. People really underestimate how much effort needs to go into marketing when you release a game, and just how many intricacies there are in that. Because we're all busy working on the game, and it's just hard to really sort of divide your time and learn how to manage it well to both market and produce the game simultaneously. And that's a really big thing that a lot of people don't even think about when they first look at doing independent games. So that's definitely another challenge. Gabe, anything else that you can really think of?
I was gonna add that I think what we did right was that, with all these difficulties Connor was talking about, it's a lot like juggling. You can really start with a lot of juggling a lot of balls, but you start from the beginning. So that building that art team was actually one of our first big tasks. So it was really fun because we sat down as a team and we were like, okay, we need to build an art team now. We need to select people, and that was really bonding for us. And especially the greatest thing was that we started smaller with 5 guys. So instead of that team that we were working before that Connor mentioned on the Thriller project, that was a game jam team that started big already from a game jam. So it's a little trickier to handle all these different people, and who's doing what and what are the goals, especially the goals, and especially major games. That's what drove us forward. We were friends with similar goals, and we wanted to find more people that had the same mentality and philosophy for making games. So it was really
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, and on the juggling analogy too, it's like starting out, it was basically it's like juggling where like I started out and I had like 30 balls that I had to juggle, and as we start adding more people on, so then we add in like 2 or 3 more people. It's like, here, you can take half the balls, and then uh, like of the varying sizes. Some of them are big ones, like the just art team and things like that. But being able to divide the balls amongst, okay, I need to use a different analogy. I'm sorry, but dividing the tasks. Let's go with that. Divide the tasks amongst the people more efficiently. So it's not just one person juggling everything on their own. It's being divided amongst other people, and that's really what you get when you're working with a team, is the ability to really divide those big and massive balls amongst each other.
You can do more with collaboration. So
Yeah, collaboration is king in the game industry.
Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna go out on a limb here. You guys aren't running through an actual office itself. Tell us about your workplace, your workspaces, and stuff like that.
Well, the interesting thing about that is for almost the whole uh, duration of Bits development, it was everybody coming over to my apartment from 9 to 5 every single day. And it was really interesting because I didn't really have a big apartment, and we had like 9 guys in there every single day. So it was like the true indie thing. Like I had bought additional dining room tables and such to be able to like accommodate more people. So the entire like living area was pretty much just our little office. We started using the walls for like sticky notes and creating like plans for things on the walls, and it really was kind of an interesting thing to have to deal with. If we had 1 or 2 more people, it would have been a disaster zone there. But on the other hand, that just made it all the more interesting and the more fun to really work together, because we were all sort of scrapping by at the same way, and it sort of brought up some more camaraderie, going out to lunch with each other every day and things like that. Like that's really some of the best part of it, was just those times that we were all just sitting there and doing an after work party or something, playing Rock Band or Smash Bros or something. But realistically, like we had to work a lot remotely, as well as I'm currently working very remotely, and that's probably a lot of the trickiest work that we've had to do, because whenever you're working remotely with people, it's a lot harder to hold the accountability up for saying like, okay, like how am I going to make sure that people are getting their tasks done on time? And that's really where good project management just comes in on things. We make sure to do weekly meetings via Skype with everybody involved with the projects. Use what's known as a Scrum methodology in order to go through and basically just have each person say what work that they got done on the week for the last week was, what their goals for the next week are. And because we did it in a way where people were, in a way, allowed to set their own tasks, it really helped to create a sort of like an environment where every single person had an actual contribution to the game. And that's something you don't get as much in larger teams, just because you've got, if you work on a team with a game for 300 people or something like that, there's going to at least be that one guy who's sitting there and is just making trees and has no creative input on the main storyline or something like that. And I think that's really where indie development shines, is because every single person has input on every single aspect of the actual game itself. So I think that's what really the best part of indie development was.
Yeah, that's totally my favorite part, especially not being only able to give those inputs yourself, but having your entire team participate and be involved on each other's disciplines. It's really helpful for the game and for our own growth as game developers. So that's really an amazing experience.
Yeah, and I mean, it is hard sometimes working with friends, because like there's times where I've literally had to like give very unpopular decisions, such as what was it, redoing all of the levels at one point.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, basically I was just like, okay, well, all these levels, let's do them another time, because they're not quite there right now. So
Yeah.
people, like, I remember you guys were very unhappy with that decision at the time, but like in the end though, like those levels, they came out 2 to 3 times better than they ever were in the start.
That's true.
And,
We're really grateful we did that.
yeah, because it was mainly on the like monochromatic Game Boy styled world that we were working on that came along, and it really made a huge difference to just go back and try again. And because we're independents, we're able to go and do something like that. If you tried to do that at a big company and say, okay, we're re-scrapping this, somebody up the line would probably say, nope, it's done, it's going out. But it really allows for much more creative freedom and stuff like that.
Yeah, quality won that day.
Awesome. Now, I've played Bit Evolution. I can say to everyone here, it's just a very enjoyable game for anyone that really enjoys the retro style games.
Well,
But
at least you didn't
for-
just say it was crap. That would be completely different here. But
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But as it is a good game, though, what would you say your most rewarding moments are? Making the game itself.
honestly, I'd probably say my favorite thing is when we've got to go and watch people play our game. Like when we go to conventions and see like little kids going and playing the game the way that I played other games when I was a kid, like pointing out secrets to the other kids and stuff like that, or going on to YouTube and seeing, God, we've probably got over 100 different streamers who have done Let's Plays of Bit Evolution, and I've watched most of them, and it's been interesting to hear the different opinions that people have, because a lot of the things that they point out that they're like, oh, they could have fixed this. Yeah, we know. Trust us. We know a lot of the things that we would have liked to improve. But then there's a lot of people who notice things that we never would have guessed, or find bugs that we never would have tried. And I think seeing the community take to the game was a huge thing that just felt very rewarding in the end, for me at least. Gabe?
That's true. The community is really exciting, and yeah, to me, my favorite part of it, it's kind of similar to yours, but actually, when we are in events and we're showcasing the game, and then I think it's amazing that sometimes you have kids and adults, but sometimes you have a parent with the kid, and for the parent it's nostalgic, and for the kid it's attractive, especially if you're a gamer kid, and some kids are really good at the game. So it's amazing to see sometimes the parents trying to explain to the kid, and like, oh, this is a reference to this and that, and then, or even the other way around, where the kids playing and enjoying the game. So it's kind of like a bonding experience that, I don't know, we thought it was kind of cool. It's kind of like a bridge between two generations sometimes. So I like that aspect.
Also, it gives you a bit of a new perspective on things too, because most notably there was a certain level. It was the third world boss that when we were creating this level, we eventually got to the point where it's like, guys, this is way too easy for like, we're clearing this every single time. We need to make this thing harder. And we're like, well, we'll just put it out and see how it goes. But yeah, it definitely looks a little too easy for us right now. And then we go and release the game or release the level to people and realize that the only reason it was easy was because we had played it about 1,000 times while we were trying to do it. It ended up being probably the hardest level in the game, and we ended up at most conventions we would run tournaments to see who could be the first person to beat it, because it was like, in retrospect, it puts a bit of a perspective that whenever you go and look at these games that people are saying are too hard or too easy, it's really, really hard to actually gauge the difficulty of a game without having a lot of people testing it, because some people are really good at some types of games, some people are poor. But when you're going through and playing it yourself, you immediately are thinking that it's too easy or too hard, and really just goes to show how important testing a game is, because while we were going through and like doing it like doing the level with no problems whatsoever, other people, like there was one YouTube streamer that halfway like basically took up like 3 videos trying to beat the level, and on the third one, like despite being a very vocal Let's Player that would talk throughout all his videos, he just like shut up and just like concentrated through that entire level. And I don't know, it's a very interesting thing to really see.
And it became our go-to challenge, so that was pretty cool.
The game itself went through green light and early and all that. Is there any tips, pointers, advice, or anything like that you want to give any developers out there that are going to go through that process or are going through that process?
Yeah, I mean, on my end, one thing is green light is a huge marketing thing. So you can't expect to simply put something onto Greenlight and expect it to go through. You really do need to have a full marketing campaign together when you go and do Greenlight. But when it comes down to early access, the big thing that I'd often say is if you're going to put it on early access, you need to finish the game. I've seen way too many issues where people put it on early access, and then because it's early access, they don't make much money on it, and then they just give up on a game after people have already paid for it. And I just think that's horrible practice right now. You really have to go into early access expecting to not make money, because what it really is great for is it is a excellent way to test a game and get feedback from the community. We're definitely going to do it again on one of our upcoming titles, just because we want to try and work with the community as much as possible to make sure that all of the features they want implemented are in there. But it's not a way to cash in or something early before it's done, because most games that go into early access fizzle out and don't even ever get completed. So I really think if you're going to do early access at all, it needs to be in the state where you know it's going to be done. You just want to be able to get testing on there more than just raising funds.
Yep, totally agree. Especially on early access, if you look at the games that are really making money on early access, they're more the most experimental ones that ended up getting hyped. And so expecting that, counting the early access as a milestone for like a deadline for starting to getting your financials in from the game, it's a really, really complicated decision. And yeah, I wouldn't recommend that. I see early access more of a great opportunity to get really connected with the community and keep getting the feedback. It's the most valuable feedback you're getting, because it's before the release. Of course, that after the release, it's really important too. But the feedback while you're working on the game is really valuable and really helps out. I'm really grateful to have had all these people, playing the game and commenting and helping us figure out some things. So
Yeah, and the other thing that I like to say on the early access and things like that is don't go betting your life on a game when you go to make games. Like, do it when you've got a good opportunity to do so. Like, we all were coming out of college and we had a open end to our life on there, but I like to say don't expect to go and start making tons of money on your first game. Realistically, we've made some money, but we haven't made ridiculous amounts. But the thing is that's okay, because we've planned it out in a way that we're able to still thrive and survive with relatively low income. I was working as a sushi chef, or I guess technically a sushi server, manager, chef, kind of all in one thing at a restaurant in nights for probably around 6 or 7 months while doing major game stuff. And it was basically work 9 to 5 at major games and then work 5 to 11 at the sushi job, go through and start again. And I like to say that that's realistically the life you're going to have as an indie game developer starting out. A lot of people think that that you make a game and then you're just basically set. It's really just being that persistent person who's able to go through and loves making these games where it's more of a hobby than anything. And if you can grow that hobby beyond an actual hobby, that's when you really just feel the reward of working in the industry, because it's one of the best feelings you can really get.
That's awesome. Okay, so we can tell this game is definitely inspired by old school retro games, things like that. What helped the team get inspired for making this game?
Gabe?
Yeah, well, okay, so even before the game, because when we started working on this game, Connor had a prototype from before he was working on the Masters. And it was like 5 of the Atari levels, basically. And we looked at it and we looked at the idea of the game, and it was just really exciting because, everybody on the team grew up playing video games. So, like for me, I loved, like all the Mario games, but also, Yoshi Island, Donkey Kong, and Metroid. And so basically we had to get the nostalgia of like, what did we grow up playing, but at the same time do research on, well, what did I not play? There were some games that we need to basically research and know exactly, what's evolving from this version to this version, and that was super exciting for us.
Yeah, and getting a chance to replay some of those games was cool. And the big thing is replaying those games and actually sort of analyzing them. Such as, one thing that I really pointed out early on in the levels was go through and play Mario. You'll notice that you can pretty much hold down the right button and time your jumps and you'll make it through the level. It's just those little things that you never really notice because they're just sort of happening in the background. But those little details that make a huge difference in the actual flow of the game, because that was actually sort of one of the main reasons why we went through and redid a lot of the Game Boy levels, and was because of the fact that there was a lot of back and forth that we had to do where you'd go right and then go down, then go left and then go back right. And just like places where you had to stop and wait for something. And realistically, it just broke the flow a lot. So we went through and sort of drew inspiration from some of our old classic games of what made those work and what we're doing wrong to make it not work, and go through and rectify it to give you the product that we have there. And for the most part, we followed it very well.
Mm-hmm. That was fun research.
Yes, I'll take any opportunity to play Donkey Kong Country again.
That's awesome. That's great. So we might be getting into a little bit of spoiler territory, but what are the next steps for Bit Evolution itself?
Well, the big thing that we're working on right now First off, we're bringing the game to other consoles, which we're really excited for, getting it onto PS4, Xbox One, etc. Definitely Nintendo platforms. But the more exciting one is we're actually working on a sort of spin-off side title called Bit Builder, which essentially is our version of the indie Mario Maker. The idea is it's going to be very similar in terms of you're able to go and create your own levels, share them with your friends, swap through the different generations of art style, and realistically, what makes it so exciting for us is we want to do it through early access again and really just work together with the community to make the sort of like platforming level editor game that everybody has always wanted. Because when I play through Mario Maker, it's a fantastic game, but I notice everybody's always saying, well, I wish that we could do this, or I wish I could do that. And I really want to create that sort of game that people are able to share and sort of create the experiences that they want to create with something like that. So I'm really excited to move forward on that. We're currently in the process of building that one, and hopefully we'll see that coming pretty soon because I really want to start getting feedback and just seeing what people are going to do. And yeah, we've already looked into mod support and things like that on there because realistically, the community is going to be a huge thing for that project. So we're really looking forward to moving forward on that one.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So that's new information out there or anything, right?
Correct.
So this is brand new information. You guys are the first to hear this, by the way.
Mhm.
We're going to be putting, not mod support, but the bit builder and the fact that we're bringing, we're going to see the bit evolution on the consoles and all that. So you guys are the first to hear this. So awesome. Okay, so let's move on. Now that we've gotten through bit evolution, let's talk a little bit about Vector Mirror, though. Tell us about the history of the game itself. Like, where was it originally thought of, created, and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I guess I can talk on that a little.
Mhm.
So, realistically, Vector Mirror was originally a title made for the 48-hour game festival. I'll put a link to one of our trailers on it in there for you guys. But Vector Mirror was a title that we made within the 48-hour game festival using a very simplistic art style in order to be able to basically make that 48-hour deadline and be able to go from there. It's kind of funny, like here, let me post a image here. It's kind of fun to show like old versions of the game where in the 48-hour game festival we had some old just wireframe type stuff, and it was actually a two-player game at start where it was two people, one on each side of the mirror, and they had to kind of interact between the two different dimensions in order to help each other across. But after going through and playing around with it for a while, we started to realize that making a game that is solely two-player isn't really feasible. You need to have some sort of single-player option. So we started making single-player versions of the puzzles, and then we started messing around with other things. And it just kind of all started bleeding sort of with different ideas back and forth until you have kind of what we have today, which even the gameplay reveal trailer, we've adjusted a lot of things since then. But essentially, it's sort of evolved into this massive first-person platforming game that we're really excited to go through and reveal some of the new stuff because we're really starting to delve into some of the story and some of the environmental storytelling on that. So we're excited for a lot of that to give it a little bit more depth than just generic platformer. So we're excited about that one, as well as we're really excited to show off some of the new mechanics that we've been working on, as well as some of the new art we've been doing. So that's been a really, really fun project for us. Gabe, do you have anything fun to add on your end?
Oh, sure. Yeah, just going back a little on the story of the history of the game. So it was done. The game jam version was built by Connor and some other people on our current team on Major Games. And basically, after we were done with Bit Evolution, and actually our programmer was still cleaning some things on Bit Evolution, and we had some free time on the design team, and we thought, okay, what would be exciting to work on next? And we were already looking forward. Actually, before that, we were already with Vector Mirror in mind, because it's um for example, I loved working and doing a 2D game. I loved it, but making a 3D experience is really exciting, especially when you have wall running and things like that. So yeah, actually that video, that the review trailer, how long it took us, Connor, to build all that?
Honestly,
It's
we
quick.
managed to pump that thing out in about a month around of work on that.
Yeah.
Like, it was a very fast prototype because we had a lot of core stuff from our Unity version we were working on. And essentially, when we went to actually start work on it as an actual project, we just went through and said, look, we're just gonna like make a proof of concept trailer in Unreal instead. And we just cruised through that. We've got a couple of really excellent programmers and artists working with us.
Mm-hmm. Oh, also,
And
yep, go ahead.
yeah, and it was just a really awesome experiment that we went through. And once we finished that 1 month sort of prototype, we're just like, you know what, we really have something that we're excited with here. And we've just been working on evolving it more and more ever since. And definitely excited to show some more of the closer to finished product stuff in the next month or two.
Mm-hmm. The feedback we've been getting was pretty good, and we've been doing some tests with VR as well, which is really exciting. We've been working with Chris Puzak. He's gonna have a talk tomorrow, but it's one of our it's like a sister company from Burnout Game Ventures, and we collaborate with keeping all the VR do's and don'ts and things like that. So it's just another interesting way that we collaborate as well. Thought you guys would like to know.
Yeah, we're really working hard to try and make uh, some cool new virtual reality stuff for the game too. Hoping to get it onto PlayStation VR and all of the other major platforms for that, because it's just an environment that's really cool to look around and see. And from all the test stuff we've done with VR, it really feels like a natural game for it. Uh,
Clicks.
Yep, it just works perfectly with what we want to do on it. And realistically, it's been tricky to get that pacing down on what we're doing, but we're really at a cool state with it now. And not sure exactly when you're going to see the next big update on online, but we'll be having it relatively soon to show you some cool stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Just so much information here. Tell us a little more about the development of the game itself, the team, the mechanics and visuals, things like that. You showed some there with the reveal trailer and stuff like that. But tell us about peer reviewing and the team itself.
All right. Well, in terms of peer reviewing and just in general, some of the stuff like the art style, as mentioned, the original core idea was to do a game with simple but cool looking art, because realistically, when you're on a timeline or something like that, being able to rapidly prototype things is key for making something that's going to be successful. So that's a huge driver of how the art originally came by, because it was very simple for artists to make and very easy for our designers to implement into the game. And with that, we're still able to evolve it and make it look much better into something that really is actually pretty visually impressive when we have some of our cooler stuff showing. But realistically, it was made to be an easy job on our artists that still looks AAA quality. and we're working hard to improve it more and more each day. But when it comes down to the actual like testing process, a lot of it comes by just literally our designers going through, making a level and saying, here, play this. And then realistically, having somebody else play your levels is one of the most interesting experiences you can really have. Because as we sort of mentioned with that earlier one, you think that the level is going to be fine and that everything works because you're the one who made it. But then you go and have one of your teammates go through and play it, and they just get completely stuck and just cannot figure out what's going on in something. So it's really a sort of good back and forth process where we'll go through, prototype a lot of things, and then just start like chopping it up to find the parts that really worked while removing the parts that didn't. Gabe can probably talk a lot more on this, being one of the core designers on this.
Oh, certainly. And yeah, it brings me back a little on that lesson of bit evolution when Connor mentioned that he made us redo all the levels. And just to give a little background on this. So we had a deadline that was on a Tuesday for the Game Boy levels, and we were crunching for like 2 weeks. We finished the levels on a Friday. So on that Friday, we finished the levels, we were happy. And Friday night, one of our audio guys went to the office, to our garage band office, whatever. And what's funny because he was there to do some audio implementation, but we were like, okay, let's use him to test, because we were testing the games with ourselves, and only when we saw him playing that. And we were all analyzing, and it was a lot of pressure on him, kinda, because it was like the five of us watching him play. But in the end, it was just we were really analyzing what were the flaws. And so basically, when he left the house, we looked at each other, and Connor, and we kind of already knew on the design team that he would ask us to change a lot of things. But it was a major revamp, so we had to crunch another 2 days, and we changed our deadline to a Sunday. But in the end, it worked well, and that similar process happens with Vector Mirror as well. Usually, when we're building levels, how we do it. So let's say I'm building a level, I'll have one of the other designers to play test it, and vice versa, and then we start, showing the level and testing it with other people. So yeah, it's an interesting process, but yeah, testing is super important, and using your team for that, especially our team, the people who are here listening, we're gonna be using you guys to play test a lot of things, because yeah, let's say Vector Mirror, there's 10-12 people at the team right now, Connor.
Mm-hmm.
Around there. So yeah, getting access to people to find a testing team specifically for it can be pricey, or it can be difficult to build and keep track of. So that's one of the ways. And other ways of testing is, of course, events, or even finding friends and making them sign an NDA and test the game.
Yeah, and whenever we're at an event, you'll notice we always have by with a clipboard, literally just making notes on like, oh, this person stopped here. Why did he stop there? Like, just little, like, we'll make notes on just tiny little things that you'd almost think were irrelevant. Just like, why is this person backtracking here? Well, they saw something that looked kind of like an arrow, so they thought they should start going back in that direction. It's like, oh, well, we didn't think that might look like an arrow, but I guess it does, so we should probably adjust that. Like, there's all those little things that, like, if you just go through and watch other people play it and make notes on it, you get a lot from it. And realistically, there's kind of two different ways, like, sort of paths of design that you see on levels now. There's the plan everything and make sure it's perfect before even touching it sort of path. And you see a lot of that, especially in some of the more higher end games, where they basically go through, and before they even start modeling a single character, all the levels are designed on paper and good to go. Granted, they'll do some testing on it, but they'll essentially have a core thing and go from there. We tend to go a little bit more on the second path, which is the rapid prototype style of design, where we essentially go through, make something very rough, very quick, and basically just say, hey, play it, tell me what you think. And we'll essentially, from that prototype, we'll be able to see very quickly if something works or if something doesn't. And that really helps in the long run, I believe, save us a lot of time. Just because if we went through and we did a solid plan for the game, and then suddenly we realized that a mechanic just isn't working well with the players, it takes a lot of extra time for us to go back and completely adjust everything around it. And by doing this rapid prototyping, we're really able to get a lot of answers really fast and make sure that the experience we have is actually something that everybody's going to enjoy, not just something that was planned to be one way and not necessarily turned out that way. So yeah, I really like the rapid prototype methodologies for level design.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Lots of colored cubes are involved.
So, let's. I have one more question for you guys, and this is more of a general question about major games, bit evolution, vector mirror. I want to know if you could give one single bit of major advice.
Well done on the puns, I approve.
Thank you. To anyone listening to this, any indie developers, anyone that wants to get into indie development, anything. If you could give one iota of advice, would it be? Either of you?
Probably, I'll start with mine and then I'll let Gabe go. Mine would probably be keep it simple. The worst thing you can do to yourself is to spend an insane amount of time on a project that, for whatever reason, just doesn't take to the public or something like that. Games are kind of a gambling game in and of themselves. Like, you can make the best game ever, but if it doesn't get the publicity, not many people are going to see it. The simpler you can make a game and the easier you can get it out, usually the better the game is actually going to be, because it's going to be simple. It's going to be something that if something does go wrong and people don't like it, you're able to just move on and do something else new. Realistically, I see people on a daily basis who come up and talk to me that they're like, oh yeah, we're working on this like 80-hour RPG with full 3D characters. And it's like, why do that? You could go through and make a game that's like 2D and slightly different, but still gets the same emotions across. You're going to save additional time, and your artists are more 2D specialized anyways. And realistically, it's just playing to your team's strengths and keeping it simple and easy to implement on your end. That way you can not just create one game that's taken you a very long time, but create 3, 4, or 5 games in a short period of time that you can all call your own. And realistically, if you've got 5 games out there, your chances of success are 5 times higher than if you have it with just one.
Cool.
Awesome. How about you, Gabe?
On my end, it's more of a tip, I think, for the ones that work with creativity in games, which is that I think that with creativity, you need to be, at the same time, you need to be a dreamer and you need to be realistic. So you need to know when to use both and usually have them both active in your mind at the same time. So basically, if you're a person that is too narrow-minded and can't explore new ideas, that's really complicated but very effective. So balancing those two things, it's a very important and sometimes tricky thing to do. So yeah, definitely try to think of great ideas, but see the ones that you can really make, kind of like what Connor was talking about. So
yeah, and the other thing that I often say too is don't get too attached.
Yeah.
Like if you've got like an idea for an enemy or for a mechanic or something, don't get too attached to it, because realistically, you never know. Like, for example, we had a couple of mechanics in Bit that we ended up cutting out completely just because the amount of extra time and effort we had for mechanics that would be used in 1 or 2 levels, it just didn't weigh out to be something that would be worth implementing. And with that type of thing, you really need to weigh every single mechanic and every art that you have in the game. Is this going to be worth it? And are the players going to appreciate this mechanic? Because you see a lot of games out there where they just keep thinking of, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we added this? And wouldn't it be cool if we added this? And suddenly you've got a game with 1,000 different things you can do, but nobody knows how to do any of them because none of them are well explained. So coming back to the keeping it simple, but like realistically, yeah, just be willing to cut things when you need to cut them and be willing to add things when you need to add them. And be willing to take criticisms from other people. Because if everybody's telling you that something's wrong, it probably is wrong.
Yep.
I see that way too much with people where you like something is weird with their game and everybody's telling them it, but they think that they know best about it and they're just not willing to accept any difference. And again, user testing is the biggest telltale thing that you can do to tell how to adjust your game or make it better.
Awesome. So I guess that leaves us just a little bit of time here to be able to open up the floor for questions. For those that are listening, would go ahead and ask questions into the Power Up main stage text channel there. If you have any questions, these guys have a lot of knowledge and a lot of thoughts on different things. It looks like S Vito is typing. Let's see what he's saying. And Ske.
Who's going to get it out first?
Who's going to ask first? We do this a lot. All right, so Sket was quicker. What do you think about making small games and publishing them on itch.io free to build up a portfolio?
Honestly, I think that's going through and building small games and publishing them is an excellent idea because realistically, the more stuff you can actually get out, the better. And each different game you create is going to give you some different experiences that you might not realize. Like, Bit Evolution challenged us in completely different ways that Vectromir did. Mm-hmm. And we learned a lot of different things from those 2 separate projects. So if you only worked on one big project, you're only going to have the experiences from that one game. Or if you work on 5, you're going to have 5 different titles that are going to be going through and competing on that. So that's probably my big thing. Gabe, do you have anything to add on that?
True, totally true. And even if we look at before Bit Evolution and Vectromir, we worked on a lot of other smaller projects to learn the little bits and things and not intended that one. But yeah, I mean, when you look, sometimes, when I was younger and I looked at games and even indie, let's say 5 years ago, I would look at an indie game. And if someone say, oh, this is our first project, you look at it and you kind of assume that it's their first thing they ever worked on, but not really. That's, like their first commercial project. So there's a lot of steps, but that's the part I love about game development, that, at each milestone we reach, at each, early access and release, you get there, you celebrate, and you look at the next step. So.
Oh yeah, like when I was in my undergraduate degree, I just kept pumping out these little stupid games on Game Maker Studio. Like I made a game called Fake Shark Real Zombies, where you go and beat the crap out of zombies as a guy dressed in a shark costume. I made a game that was like a little tower defense game. I made a game that was a town simulator game. And each time I did it, I had to do different mechanics. So yeah, doing multiple things is always a good idea.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It also helps build up a skill set.
Mm-hmm.
So the next question, this is a question of work. how did you come up with the cost of the product on Steam? Bit Evolution is what he was meaning.
Yeah, that is a very good question, because that actually was one of the hardest things for us to really work with. Because in all realism, like we worked hard to sort of figure out the price we wanted to put it at, because a lot of our competitors were putting the putting the game out at like much higher rates, or at prices that were like usually like $14.99 tended to be sort of the be all end all price that a lot of people were putting their games at, and then relying on Steam sales. We felt that $14.99 is still a little much for something. Like, realistically, we're an indie game studio. We're just trying to get a game out there, and we want feedback from people. So we kind of decided that after sort of analyzing all the different options, and by giving, basically we went through and polled people at a couple of our events where we had a little like poll for people to ask what they thought the game was worth. And after sort of analyzing all the data we got, $10 just seemed like a very reasonable round number that people could get behind and still get a lot of content for it, because it does take a while to play through the whole game, especially if you go and collect all of the pixels, which honestly is a lot of the fun of the game. We're hoping to go through and continue to update it a little bit more to address a couple other concerns from the community. But yeah, realistically, we felt that sort of $10 price tag was a good round number that people would enjoy.
That answer really came to us when we were working on our business plan, and we started, looking at the main competitors, looking at the other prices, average prices on Steam. And yeah, that's why business is really important, so that you know who you going against. But not only that, just so your product's properly placed in the market. That's super important.
And multiplying numbers by 10 is a lot easier than multiplying by 15.
Well, I see S Vito typing. Before you, question for you. This is a question for Bit Evolution. The original marketing plan behind all of it. What things did you do to get Bit Evolution out there a year ago, or more, whenever you were first announcing Bit?
Well, probably the least successful of them, but one that was kind of cool on our end, was we actually made a little marketing package that had like a Rubik's Cube with different level art on it, and we actually made cartridges, like physical cartridges for each of the realms and stuff like that, and sent those out to a number of different major media outlets, as well as going through and sending out keys to high-profile Steam, like Steam streamers, lots of social media. Realistically, though, we were trying to figure it out kind of by the seat of our pants when we were going through and doing that. And realistically, that was a big thing that we worked really hard on, sort of learning what worked and what didn't. So we're doing what we can, and hopefully soon we'll be able to sort of perfect the art of marketing, but it is a learning process as we go.
Awesome.
So, anything else that you can think of, Gabe? Like, yeah, marketing's... I'm first to admit that when it comes down to actual like marketing, that's one of our weaker ends. But it's something that's always able to be improved on, and it's kind of fun because it's something that we're not like learning something new is always a good feeling. So
yeah, marketing campaigns are always an adventure, and it's funny because when we were doing that for a bit, we didn't do we set the release date at a time while we were working on the game and doing the campaign at the same time. So I don't know, it was a little crazy, but at the same time, it was exciting because we were getting close to the end of getting the game done. And, the more you get to that point, the more you want to share it with people and things like that. But yeah, definitely marketing is something we've been improving a lot lately, and super, super important. So yeah, for other developers, don't take that for granted.
Yeah. So the next one I'm
Okay.
seeing is I saw
Yeah,
Esvito.
Esvito. He said, what are the major tutorials that you referred to for developing both of your games?
So I'm going to see if I can find any here. So
I can.
realistically, a lot of yeah, I'll let you start, Gabe.
Oh, you can go ahead. You can go ahead.
Nope, I'm still searching for things.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So yeah, for me on my end, so if you're thinking about technical tutorials, so let's say for Vector Mirror, because we're using Unreal Engine, there's a lot of tutorials online and some courses on Udemy that are usually helpful. So that's really cool. And for game design, my favorite ones are the GDC Vault. That there are a lot of
Yes.
amazing lectures there, so that's highly, highly recommended. And there's some YouTube channels like game theorists and things like that. That it's more casual, but it makes you think. As a gamer and game developer, you want to keep exercising your brain and thinking of theories and concepts. So it's always good.
So one of my favorites is actually Pixel Prospector.
Yeah.
They do a good job of compiling a lot of different tutorials and things like that. They're a little weaker on programming and stuff like that right now. They're kind of their big claim to fame that I really liked was uh, a lot of the business and marketing tutorials they have. Most notably, their indie guide to game marketing. Like, there's a lot of really cool information to be gathered from there. But realistically, when it came down to major tutorials, a lot of it was just like, oh crap, I haven't thought of how to do this yet. Let's Google it and kind of go through a couple options for what was seen on there. Because Google is your best friend, but you kind of need to be a little specific on particular things because we're all pretty well versed in a lot of the core stuff. Uh, we've got a lot of really great books from like I use a lot of my books from my undergraduate and graduate degree as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's some great just books out there that I really like to reference on a regular basis. But realistically, the best way that I usually say to do it is find a long like a long-term type tutorial series. My favorites are probably Udemy would probably be my that is our that is our go-to. Like because Udemy's got a lot of tutorial series that are like 40 hours long or something that cover the development of a whole uh, particular title. So like how to make a like side-scrolling platformer, or how to make a first-person shooter, like long, comprehensive tutorials. And because you're able to go through more than just the little pieces, you're able to get some more perspective on what things you need to think of down the line. So a lot of stuff on Udemy is really, really nice, and they have sales all the time that are really great, actually, especially for things like when I had to have our artists learn how to use Illustrator at one point. There was a tutorial that got them up to speed really quick. So that's another great site.
Yep. I was just gonna add that I don't know, Asvito, if you are starting on game development and things like that, but as you work on projects, that's actually the best way of finding good tutorials, because you're gonna be working on something and you're gonna be stuck on some section of building your game, and that will prompt you to go and find tutorials for that. So it's actually a great way of discovering new channels and sources of good information.
Yeah, and realistically, anything that's going to like don't do small don't do like 30 entry level tutorials. The key thing, as I mentioned, try to find tutorials that cover the whole spectrum of a game, because then you're able to get a wider range picture and not just how to do the basics. Because while the basics are important, what really it comes down to is being able to use some of the more complex stuff in combination with the core basics to create something that's going to work properly.
Awesome. Looks
Yep.
like Sket has a good question here. How do you find or recruit team members?
Let's see. Mostly just from word of mouth and talking at, we do a lot of conference hopping. So we go to a lot of the events and stuff in Central Florida and things like that. There's also we work with Burnout Game Ventures to find a lot of team members as well, because they've got an active application form on their website. So oftentimes we'll check their applications and see if there's anybody fitting what we're currently looking for. But a lot of it's just word of mouth and just meeting people at events who are interested in doing stuff and going from there.
Yeah, events were the most helpful, but it could come from anywhere.
Yeah, like as I mentioned, a huge portion of our artists were from me just talking to somebody at Subway. Like, it's kind of interesting where people come. As of right now, we don't really have a open application form or something. We've got one on our website, but we don't. We're kind of working on updating that right now. But realistically, the biggest thing is connections. It's meeting people and going out to things. A great way to look at things, go to IGDA meetings, or if you're like, because IGDA meetings are in pretty much anywhere in the country, even outside of the country. And like if you're in Orlando, a great place is Indienomicon. Just realistically, any sort of get-togethers for game developers are great for finding people or for getting yourself out there.
Digitally is good too, like forums. Like Bit started with forum conversation, right?
Yeah, yeah, like the original, like, because the original couple of us, like, because the original Bit prototype was me and two guys from England, actually. That he basically was just like, hey, anybody want to make a game with for retro platformer? And I basically was like, sure, I'm in. I can do programming. And we just got together and started doing it, and it all went history from there. So realistically, they always come in the weirdest places, but the sad part about it is, and I know this is the weird thing, is very rarely do applications end up going through, because we definitely check applications all the time, but the people who we call right away are the ones that we meet, and it's always tricky on that stuff, but it just comes down to whatever we need at the given moment and whoever we're talking to at that given moment. So it's a lot of luck, but
yeah, sometimes it just clicks, and sometimes it takes a couple of interviews, and each process is a little different, but in the end, I don't know, I have fun on having the team grow. I think that's a really exciting part of game development.
Like one of our, like, I remember one time we went to Indienomicon one night showing off our game, and I run into an artist who was like one of the best artists in my undergraduate class up in Wisconsin. And in Wisconsin, he I had no idea he was down in Florida now. So we basically met up with him and we're like, hey, you want to work with us? Sure, why not? So then suddenly we had another person. So it's, it really is a lot of different methods, but I don't know.
Looks like S Vito actually has a question here. He said, "What Would you suggest drag and drop simple to work engines like Build Box to make games, for instance?
Yes and no. I mean, to a degree, I did get a lot of good start when I worked on a lot of like the StarCraft map maker and RPG toolkit and things like that when I was younger, and that was a nice little experience. Usually, what I'd say for most people though is Unreal Engine 4 is actually pretty drag and drop now for a lot of their things, but it's expandable to be able to do things beyond it. So they actually have a full drag and drop programming schema in them. Game Maker Studio is excellent as well. I can always promote that because once again, there is drag and drop functions, but it's got the ability to learn a little bit more going on with scripting. Usually, though, I almost always say your best bet is to go with one of the bigger engines like Unity, Game Maker, Unreal, something like that, just because there's going to be a lot more tutorials out there for them, which makes them a little bit easier to learn in the long run. So,
yeah, that's true. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, it's like, well, BuildBox and some of those ones are definitely fun to play around with. Project Spark was a lot of fun too. Realistically, it depends what you're kind of going for. If you're looking for like doing level design and things like that, I often say level editors or things like that are very good ways to get practice. But if you're looking for something like coding or something like that, usually not so much. I often say just try out one of the big engines because they're going to have a lot of tutorials and a lot of people showing you how. And with just a little bit of effort, they're usually not that hard to learn the basics of.
Mm-hmm. And if you're focusing on, let's say, me as starting up as a designer, I messed around with BuildBox and some other engines like that, and it was great to learn the logic of how are games built. So that's awesome. But if you're hoping to build a game to be released in a commercial game, then that's a little far-fetched, I think, from that. But
It's not even just that. I'd say the thing is BuildBox, like it's still good for getting some practice and things like that. It's a great starting point. But the sooner you can hop to other things, the better, I usually say. Because if it's something that, like if you get familiar with Unity, suddenly you're a asset to much more people. Because,
certainly,
because the more familiar the actual software is, the more people that are interested in doing stuff and the easier it is to find other people to help you out on it. Because realistically, they all work very differently, but a lot of them have very easy methods. Like, I think Game Maker Studio is an excellent launching point for people because it's not a fantastic per se. Once you get up to very large projects, it tends to buckle under itself a little, but it is a fantastic way to prototype games very quickly with drag and drop functionality, and it's still a professional level engine that you can use for generating games. So Game Maker Studio would probably be my big suggestion to go look at.
I love that engine.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we actually don't have any questions and all that. We're going to start to wrap up here. Is there any more questions before we do the final wrap up? Not seeing anyone typing. But either way, thank you so much, Connor and Gabe, for
Thank
coming
you,
in.
Jesse.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for making some big announcements. I didn't expect them. I know that. Basically, thank you so much. We're going to have folks that are kind of related to Connor and Gabe in their endeavors. Tomorrow we have Rupert coming back to chat for a nice 2-hour chat. It's his fourth one, by the way.
Nice.
He's a good
Because
person
it's
to
Rupert.
listen to, though.
Because it's Rupert.
Highly recommended.
All I had to say is you can talk as many times as you want, and you can talk as long as you want. That's dangerous.
Yeah, no, and definitely he's a great one to listen to. He knows a lot of things, especially about the business side of things. So
Absolutely.
I always recommend listening to Rupert on anything you can.
Great
Oh, yeah.
mentor.
And then we have Chris B. Chris is going to be talking about VR. He's going to be talking on VR peripherals tomorrow as well. So definitely tune in. As for major games, you should check them out over at Facebook, Twitter, the whole 9 yards. They have the major games. It's major-games.com. And I'm sure one of these guys can get into the main stage here for me. Just keep an eye out for more updates when it comes to Bit Builder as well as the console releases of Bit Evolution.
Yeah, and if you ever have any questions, follow us on Facebook or Twitter. Send us messages if you ever have any questions. We tend to check it pretty frequently, and we'll help out the best we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you all.
And thank you so much for joining us. Otherwise, have a great night, folks.
Yep,
Thank
sounds
you.
good.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.